Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have me a very special guest, David Boop. David, how are you doing today?
Doing great in Atlanta, Georgia for Dragon Con. It is a beautiful day. Yesterday it was raining, and I think Atlanta is the only place where when it rains, it actually gets hotter.
Yeah, I've heard that from a couple of people that have recently moved down there. One of my author friends, but yeah, it's there in Iowa seems to be the two places that it does not cool off, has the adverse effect. So that's
Yeah.
funny. Well, I'm very jealous that you're down there. This is the only year that I have not spent my time with my mom for her birthday. Usually we go up and I go up to Michigan and stuff. So this year I was trying to get away, and my wife's like, it's just too hard with the little guys. So I was like, we could all go. She's like, I don't know if I want to do that because she broke her foot and stuff. So I said, in the future, I'm just taking him with me, and my buddies are going. I said, we're just going to take a bros trip. And my mom's like, I'll go with you guys in the future. So
Some Baby Yoda ears on him. He'll be fine.
exactly. Oh, he loves Grogu. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that'd be really cool. Well, I'm really jealous that you're down there, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about your awesome Kickstarter. So if you don't mind starting us off, just telling us a little bit about, your background, in terms of fantasy and sci-fi, and then we'll get this going for you.
Okay. So I'm a Denver-based author of two novels that are currently out. One's
Oh,
a
cool.
sci-fi noir, and one is a dark fantasy weird western. That just came out last October. That is the Drowned Horse Chronicle Volume 1 from Wolfpack Publishing. And that's a mosaic novel, which is a collection of individual stories that actually connect together and build to a
Oh,
big
that's cool.
climax. Or as my publisher likes to say, it's a TV series in book form.
That's
So,
even awesome. That's a great way to describe it. I think that's
yeah.
awesome.
So that one's out. And then previously, I had a sci-fi noir that's published by Wordfire Press, which is Kevin J. Anderson's imprint. I have over 100 short stories out in all genres, especially sci-fi and fantasy. And I've edited 9 anthologies, 3 weird western, 3 space western, a couple of pulp hero ones, and a
Oh,
couple of
cool.
odd ones. I'm working on a Green Hornet and Cato anthology right
Oh,
now.
that's super cool. I love them.
Yep. A tribute to Jack L. Chalker's Well World,
Oh.
and a couple of other surprises down the road. So,
Oh, that's awesome. I just want to say to our audience, I think you're one of 3 people that when I found on Facebook a few years ago, I like looked up, and I think it was almost too many places to look. Like your name was popping up and everywhere, and I was like, okay, that's really cool. So I was checking out a few things here and there. But yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's really cool. Do you mind just real quick just telling us a little bit how you got into writing, stories and things like that? Just a little bit about
oh,
that background for you?
I've always been a storyteller, or as my mom would say, a liar. No, no, I've always enjoyed telling stories. I've always had this creative thing in my brain. I thought I was going to be a filmmaker. That was my
Mm.
goal in life. I was to be a filmmaker. And even though I've made a couple of short films now,
Oh, cool.
um, I never broke into that industry. And then I couldn't write long form for the longest time
Mm,
because I was undiagnosed ADHD.
mm.
Um, and the process was writing process was difficult for me. So wanting to make films, can't write long form. So I got into commercial production for a while,
Oh, wow, that's cool.
writing 30 and 60-second movies. Uh, Segue from that, many years later, I'm a journalist. I'm doing movie reviews. I'm writing some comic strips and things like that. And an opportunity came up to write a short story. Now, in the days since I first started writing, I'm fairly old. Uh, Word processors came into being, and I found that I could write more if I could, edit on the fly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Keep
yeah.
up with my brain. And so word processing turned out to be the key to me being able to write longer form.
Mm.
And so after a few short stories sold, I won some contests, things like that, I decided to write the first novel, and I sold it to an indie publisher on the first 3 chapters.
Oh, wow.
Then I had to finish it. So, but that got
Darn it.
released. That was She Murdered Me with Science, and it was released from a small indie that went out of business. And Kevin was kind enough, Kevin J. Anderson was kind enough to reprint it for
Yeah.
Wordfire Press. Um, but then I had a bunch of tragedies happen. My mom got
Mm,
cancer.
mm.
I lost some very important people to me, and it took a while before I could get a second novel out.
Yeah, yeah.
And and so finally last year, even though I've written two other novels, was my second novel published. But in
Mm,
between there, I have, like I said, over 100 short stories. I mean, I kept the writing process going. I
yeah, yeah.
just didn't do the long stuff because it seemed like life was always knocking on the door and saying, here's how we're going to screw you today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and so I could get in and get a short story done in a weekend, but sitting down and write a novel was really tough.
Yeah.
But now I'm back. I've got that novel. I've got a novel. It's a dark fantasy media tie-in novel that's based on a role-playing game called Rippers Resurrected. It's kind of like
Oh,
Penny
cool.
Dreadful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's got that dark horror aspect. It's got steampunk. It's got a little bit of
Oh,
everything in it,
cool.
and that will be coming out next year. I'm working on Drowned Horse Chronicles Volume 2 and 3.
Cool.
I have pitches for, I have a historical middle grade fantasy that's being shopped around that's based on A
Oh, that's
Christmas
neat.
Carol.
Oh, cool.
It's the untold story of the Scrooge family as exorcists.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so
Sold. You
that's,
sold
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Let me know when that
And
pre-order gets there.
yeah, well, if I could just get somebody to buy it, it's a
Yeah,
tough
yeah.
industry right now.
Yeah.
So
Amen to that. Yeah.
and so yeah, I mean, I've got novels out, but I still write the short fiction. I write short film and things of that nature as well. I launched my company, relaunched my company, Longshot Productions, and we're doing all sorts of fun stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I just wanted to say two things there. Like I too like really I thought I was gonna be a movie, I just wanted to like write screenplays and work in movies. I fell in love with movies, and then my drama teacher unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but he just got me into, writing screenplays and things, and I was like definitely sure that's what I was gonna do. And then I think that's where, I went back to writing, like other stories. But my son was just born, like I said, before we got recording, and I definitely get the time thing because I can write in a few days, easily, even just in a few 15-minute sprints, a one chapter or 2,000 words. So I'm doing the Kindle Vella series right now and just pausing from
Okay.
the novels because it's very difficult, when you're running around after them and stuff, trying to, keep your mind set on, the longer stuff. So I totally understand that. I'm had to rework, the calendar a little bit. So I definitely
Well, and
get
that's
that.
why the
But
Mosaic novel works so well for me,
mm,
because I can
makes
get
sense.
in, write a chapter that stands alone, but I also have this flow chart that shows where those stories go and what's supposed to happen
Yeah, yeah.
to various characters and stuff like that. So that by the time you get to the end, it's like a big two-part finale, and wraps up that particular arc.
Mm.
So yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
cool. So I'm sorry, because you just mentioned too, I totally forgot that, about your company. So what are you guys doing currently then?
So I have a short film script that
Oh,
I
cool.
bringing to an indie producer.
Oh, awesome.
It would be something to send around the circuit, as it were,
Mm,
that kind of thing. And then I so Longshot Productions opened a creative collective in Denver.
mm. Oh,
There
that's cool.
I have an office that has drop-in cubes for authors and drop-in artist space for artists.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
yeah, and so I'm trying to build this connection between writers and artists, because a lot of times writers get screwed by artists get screwed by writers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'd like to have a group of people together that can that they're known quantities, they're
Yeah, yeah.
trustworthy, going to
Yep.
come through, right? And they've got the talent. So yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. That's what I'm trying to do with the podcast. Like I have a few more artists coming on. I would say artists is the hardest category. Like I'm trying to get artists, voice actors, different editors, publishers, things like
Call
that,
me after the
agents.
show. I can probably help.
That sounds good. Well, I'm just like I'm like that's like our podcast group on Facebook. I'm trying to get more people to collab. People are like, "Are we allowed to put services here. I'm like, yeah, that's the whole point. I'm like, I know other groups are like, don't do that. I'm like, but we all need a place to go. I agree, where you can find something that's reliable. So
Yeah.
I think it's super, super important work. So that's really awesome. Definitely have to connect about that later. So yeah, that's cool. All right. So my favorite part, just talking about everybody's Kickstarter. So what is your Kickstarter? And excuse me, because I just want to make sure I'm pronouncing that right. Is it Travailiant Rising?
Travailiant Rising, yes.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
Travailiant Rising is a story about a post-kaiju world. The kaiju have come, decimated most of society. We have beaten them back using giant mechs called Decimators. Um,
Oh,
we
cool.
we beat them, they're gone, but they left most of the cities uninhabitable.
Mm,
People have all had to move into the rural area. The survivors have moved into rural areas. Before we can reclaim the cities, they have to be knocked down.
mm,
The way that they chose to do this, because life is now so utterly precious, that people who are suffering from, let's say, anger management issues and
mm.
maybe have a trouble reining that in, they stick them in these giant unarmed mechs called now travailants, after the word travail, which is to, basically aggressively get out of motions. And they put them in this mech, and they're guided by an AI therapist, and they go into the cities and they reclaim them. They level them while the AI therapist guides them through their trauma.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
so it's giant robots used for anger management therapy.
That's cool.
That's the core of the story. And then, of course, the comic follows the adventures of a guy named Harold Hodges. He's our everyman, and he's obviously suffering from some anger issues. Been arrested several times for fighting, and finally they said, "Listen, you got a choice. We can send you to clean up this radioactive waste left by the giant kaiju, or you can do this therapy." And of course, he chooses that because the other one's almost certain death.
Fair.
And so in that regard, we have Harold. We see him get in his mech and guided through his therapy with a AI therapist named Tate. The problem is, of course, nobody had an idea of how deep Harold's anger went and what it was
Mm,
based on.
mm,
And that chaos ensues. And then
mm.
there's a twist at the end that's going to lead to the other episodes or other issues of the
Cool.
series, with if the Kickstarter funds. And each time we're going to explore a different type of PTSD,
Oh, that's
working
cool.
working with different therapists and so forth to guide my writing so that I am respectful
Mm,
and exploring these basically silent wars that are going on. People
mm,
who survived COVID, people who survived wars, people who have survived mass shootings and things like that. The kaiju war is a substitute for that, which is why we're not actually focusing on the war. You'll see it in flashbacks,
hmm.
but mostly it's about how people have to live after an event like this.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool. And the initial concept came from Kevin J. Anderson, who co-wrote the comic with me. Well, so sorry, flashback here. It actually started as a short story that was published in an
Oh, okay.
anthology called Mech Age of Steel. Mech Age of Steel, which is now kind of out of print, but was published by Outland Press. And I was
Mm,
looking for a comic project to work on because I don't have a comic yet. And I have all this other stuff we talked about, but I don't have a comic book. And I decided that it was time for that to stop. and and I went to Kevin. I said, I wanted to go farther with the story. Would you mind if I turned it into a script? And he said, absolutely, as long as you don't involve me. Because which is not true, but he said he teaches now. He's a professor,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
teaching a master's publishing course, and he's like, as long as all I'm doing is checking over your work, yeah, go for it. But he sent me sample scripts of a lot of his work, his Star Wars stuff, his Dune stuff, and so forth, for me to almost write with him as a guide. I could see and I could incorporate his voice
Oh,
into
that's
the
cool.
reading. The script came out good, and we took it to Outland, who also does comics, and they loved it. And so now here we are at the Kickstarter.
That's awesome. There was
Yeah,
a lot of cool stuff there. So
yeah,
uh,
thank you.
I totally get the need in the comic thing, but right before the pandemic, there was a local guy, and him and me wanted to do. I always loved the Diablo video game where you're just
Mhm.
going down, and I always loved the Smith. I forget his name, Griswold or whatever it is. And I was like, oh, would it be cool if it's like a warrior who's like a veteran with some PTSD, that kind of thing, and then his little thief friend comes along to see him, but then like goes into this ruin and like unleashes hell essentially, and then they have to go with like the local healer who's their old sorceress companion. They have to basically like, take care of this. So we had the comic like pretty much like we were like, we were in there ready to go, and then the pandemic happened. So I get that feeling of like needing
Right.
it. My wife's always asking me, she's like, one of these days when you get these novels and things done, she's like, you're gonna have to go back and get the comic book done, because I wanted to be an illustrator originally and do my own comics. So I definitely
Oh,
understand the bug and the itch right there. So
I can't do stick figures. Um, I did on my website, I have a 4-panel comic strip that I
oh,
started
cool.
playing around with, called Sign Here Please, and story about a new author at his first book signing. Not autobiographical per se, but I won't say that some of the
Are
stuff
you
that happened
sure?
to him wasn't inspired by things that happened to me when I was a new author at book signings.
I'll have to
And
check that out.
yeah, yeah, sign here, please. But since I can't draw and I don't have the money to pay for an artist, I did everything in Photoshop. I used clip art
Hmm.
and
Oh, that's a
altered,
good idea.
yeah, I altered clip art to build the store and the character and the other various characters that come through.
Oh, cool.
And there's a lot of Easter eggs in there and stuff like
Oh,
that.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
So,
super cool.
but I only did one season of it, 13 episode or 13, strips. I started working on season 2 where he's going to be at his first Comic-Con.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
we got about 2 of those done, and then life,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I definitely
so,
know that.
so
Yeah.
but yeah, I keep my
Sounds.
hands in a lot of things. Kevin has this popcorn theory of success that when you throw back in the day when you used to actually have to heat up popcorn in a pan,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
you throw a bunch of kernels in the pan and you just shake things up until things start popping, but you don't know which one is the one that's going to start popping.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
No, I totally. That's like been the last 3 days for me, is basically just throwing out, stuff, and had a couple cool things come back, and some other things, didn't really pan out. This was one of them that, turned out really well. So I was like, okay, cool. You never know.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, I had a
yeah.
big pan out last weekend as well. I had actually pitched a card game, and it got all the way up to the final thing, and they're like, yeah, no. And I'm like,
Just,
it was so much work.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe next
So
time though, right?
maybe next time.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get that. Well, I checked out the your Kickstarter, right before we got on. I was at lunch and I was playing around. So yeah, the definitely sounds like my kind of thing. I'm gonna blame, people like you and Kevin for and some other authors and writers for making me just need like really unique stories. Um, because now like I'm addicted. Like before I could, I felt like like you don't know what you don't know, so like I was reading, certain stories in the past, I feel like, and I won't name any names, but like they were, just kind of felt repetitive, and I kind of liked that for a while. But then as soon as I started to read another group of authors, and as once Kevin started to kind of veer away from Star Wars and do some other things, I got into, just a lot of different things, and now I look back and I was like, God, that was like 18, I think 20 years ago, and now it's like I crave it. My wife, she's like, you like particular books, and like Tim Akers just had one recently, like this novella, and it was just absolutely amazing. Anthony Ryan had a couple novellas I was like really addicted to, but it wasn't your typical fantasy. There was some very unique ideas, so I feel it's
We're
really
at the
cool with the comics. So
Yeah, we're at the point of publishing now where between the indie publishers, self-publishers, and so forth, that we can break a certain amount of convention. It doesn't
yeah, yeah, yeah,
always
totally.
work. You have to learn the rules before you can break them. You can't just
Yeah,
go
yeah, yeah.
breaking the rules. but
Yeah.
we're at a renaissance where literally you can find any kind of story you want through story
Yep.
tags and
Yeah, yeah.
things. You're not stuck to a specific genre.
Yep.
I've
Or
run
even
panels,
subgenre.
yeah, or even subgenre. Yeah, I've run
Yeah.
panels on the idea of the genre is dead. We're in the
Yeah, yeah,
era of
yeah.
the tag.
Yep.
And I think it's true, and I think it's good for us. It's like when David Blaine like revealed all the secrets of magic, and everybody had to like step up their magic. I think
Yeah.
we're at the now where we're stepping up our publishing. We're presenting historical fantasy that's not just based Eurocentric or
Yeah.
American mythology.
Yep.
We're now, you know, seeing a lot more Asian and African and Native American and so forth, and it does nothing but strengthen storytelling
Yep.
because we're doing things that we've never done before. That's one of the great things about editing anthologies is
Mm.
when I go into an anthology and I'm addressing a theme, I don't want to just look at that theme from one point of view. If you're going
Yeah.
to explore a topic, you got to look at it from all the different angles. So all my anthologies have a mix of diverse voices, LGTB, Black, Native American, all of that. Because, like, for example, the Old West, it wasn't just white men on white horses with hats.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
You know,
so I
the
was to
whole,
say, sorry, just real quick, like, because I was just talking with another writer about that, and we were talking about, a couple of books that we had read back in the day, and I don't think people realize, I'm a history teacher. I was like, 65% of, cowboys were, Mexican American or African American, and it's like
yeah,
they weren't represented. So yeah,
yeah.
it's a good point.
Yeah, no, there were whole towns that were run by women, Mexicans.
Yep, totally. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
And we don't talk about that history of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, you know, we whitewashed it with the movies. Now, don't get me
Yep.
wrong. I love me a Tombstone. I love me a Silverado. I love a lot of those Western films. Cowboys and Aliens. I loved it.
Oh yeah,
At
yeah.
Yeah, basically it told me there was going to be two things in it, cowboys and aliens. As long as it honored that promise,
Yep.
I was going to enjoy it. And I even threw in some Native Americans as a bonus. I wasn't even
Yeah, yeah.
expecting them. They weren't in the title. So
Yeah, yeah. No, Totally. Yeah. The movie's
yeah.
really
So,
underrated. I just read an article from one of the indie um authors that I can't forget who it was right now. But yeah, they're like, "Hey, check this out because you like this movie." And I was like, they did a really good job of just talking about that. Yeah, they gave you two things and they really delivered on both. And I was
yeah,
like, "Yeah, someone back and rewatched it. Yeah, it was really
yeah.
good."
So yeah, so you know, so it gives us chances like for Kevin and I to do something unconventional. When we
Yeah,
sat
yeah.
down, he got the invite to Mech Age of Steel, and he's like, you know, what do we do that's different,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
totally.
we don't want just, you know, war mechs and things of that nature. We wanted to stand out, and the response from that story was really good, which is why I never completely let go of the idea.
That's really cool. I just also like just want to go back to what you had said too about, silent wars that, people are, fighting and going through. And I love that term, because I think saying PTSD or whatever, I think it's almost, I don't know. think silent war to me that just really hit me because I know a lot of people, that are going through that. I know my wife just had her son, and a lot of her friends, like our friends had babies at the same time, and you talk about silent wars going on, with postpartum and everything. I mean, and it's just crazy how many people I feel like I just think that's a really good topic that you guys are focusing on because you had me at the Mech Warrior thing. I was like, yeah, I want to read it. I love that stuff. But, when, going through and, you know, actually looking at it, I'm like, okay, this is a really cool thing you guys are doing. So I really hope that, it gets back to
Thank
because
you.
I think that's a really interesting story. So I
Yeah.
think it definitely needs to be told. So
Yeah. Well, and I've suffered from PTSD. I was in a retail for a long time, and I had a store
mm,
robbed, and I had a shotgun up against the back of my head
oh
for 2 minutes.
geez.
So I had some PTSD after that. I've been in a couple of car accidents that Now anything out of the corner of my eye makes me freeze up, and things of that nature. So yeah, and it's funny because it's like you think you get victory on these things, and then I'm driving through Atlanta, and there's a truck that's going on an overpass, but it came out of this
Yeah,
corner,
yeah,
which is where I
totally.
got hit. And even though it's on the overpass, it still triggered me a little bit, not
Yeah,
like, kind of trigger, but
yeah,
just enough to go, what's that? Right. And that's from the car accidents. It doesn't ever quite go away.
yep,
But you can gain victory in it. And that's what our stories are about. They're about gaining the victory, and finding other people who get it, who understand it.
yeah,
I have a friend who's been suffering post-COVID. He feels like now we're looking at COVID through a romantic pair of rose-colored glasses, and the idea that, oh, we're all survivors now and we got through that. And there are a lot of people who didn't, like the isolation and
yeah, yeah,
everything, and the fear every day that society was going to collapse. Um, they struggle with that still, right?
yeah,
And then you
totally.
hear about upsurges in COVID again, and it triggers them,
Yep,
and they get scared, and they're like, I would rather die than go through that again.
yeah, yeah,
And you have to talk them down, or get
yep,
them help, right?
yeah,
Or both, really, honestly.
yeah,
And so it's a situation where there are a lot of these things people struggle with that they're not willing to come forward on in a, you know big way, that this comic will hopefully show them that we get it, we understand, you're
yeah,
not completely alone out there. And so with each one we look at, each character is going to have a different form of this, and their eventual victory is going to be different for each one of them.
I just, yeah, I just like that. Yeah, like I mean, I've had couple situations pop up, and my most recent one, and somebody was like, "Oh, I don't know." I just kind of felt like people were kind of, even people that knew me really well, friends, family, whatever. They're kind of like, "Oh, you're not over that yet," and I'm like, "No, because it's not a cold." Like it's like this is a. I was like, it's not like I'm like can say what you want or do what you want, but so I think it's kind of hard to for some people to make that connection, and um, but
Yeah.
I mean, I personally connect with that because I'm like, oh, I'm like that actually, like with the Travailant, I'm like, okay, I'm like that kind of sounds more like me, particularly now,
Yeah.
after like stuff, and I'm like, oh, like I think I've always kind of been like that. I do martial arts, and I'd much rather go and hit a bag or go to a class or and get all the energy out, kind of thing. And I always feel better after that. I'm de-stressed and everything. So for me, I really connect with that sort of thing. I'm like, I'd love to get in a mech suit and destroy a city and help people,
Right.
and
Right.
feel
That's
good
why
and
these
helping at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why rage rooms were getting real popular before COVID.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of them went out of business because it's
Yep.
not something that you can sell online.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
It's true.
yeah, but rage rooms were getting real popular because there is a certain amount of aggression that we're all feeling, whether it's political, whether it's environmental, whether it's socio emotional. There's just this pressure that life is putting on us right now. You can't turn on news, but then you're
Yeah.
scared that you're going to miss something if you don't
No.
go watch the news, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And then so then you're left going, afterwards, it's like, oh, well, we're all going to hell. So I'm going to go in the back room, pet my dog or my cat and cry for a while. But
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
some people, they have that pain and they don't know what to do with it. And I thought rage rooms were a great idea for that.
Yeah.
And we kind of took that idea and put us in a situation where, why would you put somebody in a giant mech to get out their aggression? And it's like, oh, there's 3/4 of the world was decimated, and the survivors, they have survivor guilt, they have this PTSD, they have this anger, And but they can't, like, you can't even get in a bar fight. You can't do anything that could endanger a person because we have to rebuild society.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so the what would be a minor infraction today is a major infraction in this world. Because what if you hit somebody and they fall and they hit their head and they die? That's one less person that we can get genetic material from to repopulate the planet.
Yeah, yeah.
And so yeah, um, you know, that's that's what we're going with is this idea of, there's people who have a lot of pain inside, and sometimes you just need a giant robot to work that out.
I think that's fair. I think it's just a great piece of world building that I mean, my buddy and I just talked about that recently because he's writing a totally blanking right now because I'm really tired, but post-apocalyptic, or dystopian. So he's writing a dystopian, like kind of like fantasy sort of thing, or dystopian sci-fi, sorry, is what he said. And yeah, when we were talking about that, like trying to put ourselves in that scenario, we were discussing, like with a reduced population, like what sort of things would change. So I think that's a great one that you guys have brought up, in terms of world building, because you present certain knowledge, right? And I do too, that even if it's minuscule today, if three-fourths of the population is gone, that knowledge needs to be regained. It needs to
Right.
be, saved. So if you do injure somebody or kill somebody, I feel like, it would be way more severe. So I think that's a great piece of world building right there. That's really unique. So
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you. Thank you. We're
Yeah, no
proud of
problem.
it. We're a little proud of it. So we're also really proud of the art that we've gotten with it. So we've
Oh,
got,
it's incredible. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
and there's more to come because we have the art done by Rob Nix, who did an amazing, oh my God, when you see these pages, it's ridiculous. It is so good. And he captured everything just perfectly. And then we just announced this week that Bob Eggleton, Mr. Zilla Bob, Mr.
oh
King
wow.
Kaiju, the master of monsters, is doing our alternate cover.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
yeah, so we just put that up as a reward, is the Bob Eggleton alternate cover as one of the rewards. And then we also just put up t-shirts with that
Oh yeah,
art.
they're really cool.
So yeah, yeah, and also a blueprint of the mech we're working on.
Yeah,
So there's
yeah,
gonna
that
be
was
three
cool.
t-shirts available. We're also going to put those up as prints for the rewards as well.
Oh, that's cool.
We've got a manuscript review by Kevin and I is one of the
Mm,
rewards for those aspiring writers out there.
mm.
We've got we've got recipe cards. So
That's
Kevin is
cool.
well known for making amazing food. He's a hell of a cook. And one of the things that he makes that he's most proud of is his lasagna. And he's got a special recipe. It's a secret recipe handed down through, I believe it is Jedi holocubes.
Yeah.
Uh, you know,
Holocrons, yeah.
holocrons. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. He got it out of a temple. And the Italian Jedi's tried to keep this secret for generations, but he got a hold of the holocron and recreated it using modern
that's
cheeses and
awesome.
and then I have a recipe for my pumpkin chai cheesecake bars.
Oh wow.
So dinner and dessert and a book. So
That's awesome.
you can sit there, read the book digitally or in your hand while you're eating dinner and dessert. Or make sure everybody in your family has a copy of the comic, and then you can have a discussion group afterwards over the cheesecake. No.
That's awesome. That's super cool. I
Yeah.
love that because we were just talking about unique Kickstarter things because yeah, my buddy was like, you should just do a Kickstarter. He like wants me doing so bad. I was like, I'll do it eventually. It's like, I think you should do it for these covers that I need. So I was like, okay, we'll think about it. And we are like discussing different, things. One of my friends made these amazing bracelets They were just really cheap, but like really cool. And I was like, well, I'm not that talented. So we were discussing some unique things. So that's really cool.
Well, we look at what we can offer, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
both
yeah.
Kevin and I are editors. So, of course, a manuscript review. We have
Yeah.
Tuckerizations available. And also, there's a chance to either come in for a Kevin hour-long Zoom talk on publishing with a Q&A, or you can get a one-on-one 15-minute conversation with him to ask him anything. So an
Oh,
AMA.
that's cool.
So we have those available as well. Plus the original hardback of the anthology that the short story
Oh, that's
is
cool.
available. So you get not only our story, but a bunch of others. And then there's also a package that you get all of a bunch of first issues from other Outland comics. So
Hmm.
depending on what your interest is, we have a little bit of something for everybody. So
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's super cool.
yeah.
I just was curious before we start to wrap up here. I just want to make sure that we talked about this just because anytime I have somebody on with Kickstarter, I know a lot of people were all trying to learn as much as we can. I was just curious, what were just a couple of the challenges that you guys found in terms of this particular Kickstarter?
Timing.
I mean,
Timing is huge. This is the worst time next to, like the week before Christmas, really, to
yeah,
launch a Kickstarter, right? Um, they give you, and there are analytics to show when's the best time to run a Kickstarter.
yeah,
Kickstarter got bumped back a couple of times. And so
mm,
we end up in this end of summer spot where everybody's focused on getting outdoors, doing one last trip before the kids go back to school. But then
yep,
there's also getting back to school, right? Whether it's college or whatever, right? So people are adjusting their schedules, they're not online as much, things of
yeah,
that nature. So the timing was not great on this Kickstarter. Also, from a timing aspect, it launched when both Kevin and Bob Eggleton were not only out of town, but out of country. And
oh,
neither of them had internet access where they were at reliably. So that kind of hurt us the first week. Everybody's back, everybody's promoting. That's why we're adding new rewards um, to the rewards levels, so that we can breathe some new life. That Kevin and Bob and Rob and myself and Jeremy Moeller and everybody over at Outland can then talk up as well. So yeah.
no, that's
So
um,
timing is huge.
yeah.
It is huge. I've noticed other Kickstarters that launched around our time are also struggling. So
Oh, it's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting to me because that you're probably the eighth person I've had on, with a Kickstarter, and that's the number one thing that's what people just keep saying is the timing and yeah, and varying rewards. So it's funny that you guys all mentioned the same thing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and rewards are really important too. You have to play up to the fans. We are reaching directly to Kevin's fans. Because if you've read his books as you have, as
yeah,
I have, they've been a huge part of our lives. Those Star
yeah,
Wars books,
yeah, totally.
Jedi Knights and everything. That was our Star Wars
Yeah,
until we get the sequel series, and then they make everything canon. But as you can see, they're starting to incorporate things from the legends into the new canon,
yep,
because those stories were so strong
yeah,
and they
yeah,
were so well crafted, and they kept us going when there was nothing else for decades. So yeah, of course we feel strongly about him, and writers like Alan Dean Foster and Mike
oh
Stackpole.
yeah,
These three people are my mentors. They're the ones who I've been learning from my entire career. Kevin, Alan, and Mike have been instrumental in making me who I am. So, I owe them the world. And so I always
yeah.
try to make sure Alan's been in a couple of my anthologies, Mike's been in one, Kevin's been in a couple. I got an anthology with Timothy Zahn.
Oh, Tim,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, who I'll be seeing in a couple of days.
Oh
So
man,
so yeah, it's um, knowing the audience, knowing what that audience would like to see. Unfortunately, one of the ideas that we had that we weren't able to get together in time was miniatures, because of
Oh
course
yeah.
everybody who loves mechs loves miniatures, whether or not
Yep.
it's game playable or not.
Yep.
Getting miniatures that can be statted out for Warhammer or Mech Warrior or something like that. That was one of the things we had on the books. It didn't happen. Now, if all of a sudden this goes bonkers crazy and we not only make our goal, but we're hitting over it, maybe we revisit that. Maybe
Yeah.
we offer that as a backer reward or something like that, when you get your backer kit. But we have to hit that goal first, and we're not there, and we need help with that. So getting the word out, even if you can't support it, but you believe in this type of comic and this kind of world, sharing the Kickstarter is huge. That's another big thing, is making sure people share. Without word of mouth, you're just um peeing in the wind, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah. You just treading water.
um
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, there's so many voices out there. Again, between Amazon and Vela, you even mentioned,
Yep.
and indie publishers and Kickstarters and Indiegogo and Patreon and so forth. We're it's a renaissance, but it's also a glut. It is really
Yeah.
hard.
It's hard to be
Um,
seen.
yeah, it's hard to be
I've
seen,
heard.
but for the reader, they can target very specific interests and so forth. So yeah, if you like what you see, even if you can't support, just share it. That helps us, tag the Outland, tag Kevin and I, tag the artists Bob and Rob and anything like that. That helps us. It knows that people actually care about what we're doing.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody too that you'll actually be able to find the Kickstarter link in the description of this video. So again, we have been stressing this for the last season, season 2 and season 3. We're just going to keep stressing that, like, share, subscribe. It doesn't matter if it's this podcast, it's anything. Just I share things all the time. I'm just like constantly sharing, sharing, sharing. My wife's like, your feed is just crazy. I know a lot of people block me, friends and family, but I want to make sure that, things like your Kickstarter are seen, and and that people can get the information, and in my opinion it's the only way to help people beat the algorithm, so to speak.
Right.
So I just want to remind the audience, the Kickstarter is going to be in here. I love if you would actually share that over the podcast because the Kickstarter is more important. If you could do both though, just to help David and Kevin out, that'd be great. But really, David, if there's anything else I can do in this time or after, like I said, in the future, you guys have anything, just speaking of tagging, I tell people all the time to tag me, to go to the podcast group. I don't care where. I think people are afraid to tag me, and I don't really know why. It's the only way that I see things half the time. But
Yeah.
yeah, just send me
Well, and
anything, and we'll get
Facebook,
it as soon as possible.
all of them, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, are kind of weird about, like, you can tag some people in some posts and you can't tag them in
Yep,
others.
yep,
And,
yep,
sometimes it does, it puts their name, and sometimes it puts just the
yep.
username. And it gets to the point where it's like, I wish there was a universal tagging system.
No,
I mean,
totally. Yeah,
hashtags work really well for tagging people, but you have to have people looking for that hashtag
yep,
too. So
yeah.
we've been hashtagging Travailiant Rising, one word.
Oh, cool.
But I still see under 1,000 posts. So
Yeah,
we got to start a movement. We got to start a revolution.
yeah.
Viva the Travailiant. So
I think a good T-shirt. Yeah, I like
there
that.
you go. Oh
Well,
well,
thank
yeah.
you.
See the
Yeah,
t-shirts.
yeah, it'd be cool. I liked him. I saw him earlier. I was looking. I was like, "Ooh, I wonder if I can get away with this with my wife." But she hasn't watched since season 1, so I don't think she knows what I'm buying anymore. So it's kind of nice. But she was, "I'm starting to watch more." I'm like, "Oh, that's fine," because I talked about buying this book or that comic or something. So now she doesn't know. Nobody tell her, or I'm not doing any more videos. Just saying. But David, like I said, if there's anything else we can do in the meantime or after, for future things, just send it to me, email it to me. You have my email, and we will get it out to all our social media, website. I'll go outside and just start with a bullhorn or something like that. Do what we got to do to get it out there. So
Well, the Green Hornet and Cato anthology will be going to Kickstarter. It's not so that will be going out, and that's got a great TOC. I can't reveal it yet, but it's got great TOC and it's got a great cover artist. We're just putting the final things on it and then figuring out. I think we're going to kickstart it late January,
Oh, got it.
which will be on the 88th anniversary of the Green Hornet
Oh, that's right.
first radio broadcast. So,
Oh, that's cool. Oh,
yeah,
that's awesome. That's
yeah,
super. So I have to have you back around like December then to
yeah.
put in an extra bonus episode or something like that so that we can get
Sounds
you in the
good.
lineup. I'll actually make a note for that way. Because I was talking to a couple people. I just had too many people that need to be interviewed. And I was like, well, as soon as the fall kind of hits, I was like, I'll be ahead of schedule. Then we can start to get some bonus
Right.
and stuff like that. But yeah, that's cool. I'll actually write that down that way. I'll email you. But thank you so much, David. Like I
Well,
said,
thank you.
if there's anything else, yeah, anytime, anything you
Uh,
need, just let me know and we'll help you out as
okay.
best we can. So
All right.
cool.
Thank you for doing this. You guys have a
Yeah.
great Labor Day weekend. And
Yeah, you
oh,
too. Enjoy
this is
Dragon
on
Con.
Monday. So I hope you had a great Labor Day weekend
Yeah.
when this broadcast. So yeah. All
Yeah.
right. All right.
Awesome. Well, have a good weekend. See you later, David.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.